If you are a homemaker who experiences frequent triggers or fight-flight responses, then today's video is for you. Hi, homemakers. My name is Kiri with the Transformed Homemakers Society, and my mission is to help homemakers go from overstimulation and chronic stress to a peaceful and thriving home so that they can serve their families and the Lord. Over the years, I've had my own major transformation in my homemaking, going from overstimulated, highly sensitive, and chronically stressed to cool, calm, collected, and unbelievably fulfilled in my role. Now I help other homemakers have their own transformations. So if you're interested in working with me, please check out the free workshop in the link down below. So in this video, I'm going to talk about how to quiet down your triggers when you're in a state of fight or flight as a homemaker. I'll give you 4 tips on what to do when you're triggered that will be beneficial for your healing journey and to quiet down your triggers. So let's take an example of a trigger that maybe you have or maybe you don't, but it's just an example that we'll use throughout the whole video. And feel free to replace this example with your own relevant trigger. Okay, so let's say that your trigger is your toddler throwing food. Okay, that's the example we'll use throughout the video. Maybe this triggers you to react in a certain way. Perhaps you yell, maybe you cry, maybe you scream, maybe you throw something or break something, or maybe your body produces some kind of painful symptom even. These are all obviously destructive and counterproductive behaviors to this trigger, right? Of course, some of them are triggers that you can control, kind of. It's so hard when you're in a state of fight or flight, so I don't want to shame anybody. And then some of them, like for example, if your body produces some kind of painful symptom, you can't really control that. It's just your body reacting in that way because it's in a state of fight or flight. Okay, so what should we do in this case? My first tip is to quickly get on the same page as God on the matter. So what would this look like? Well, think about what would God say about this scenario. Would he scream or break something? No, of course not. He would probably say that in the case of your toddler throwing food, that this is an opportunity for training for this child. The key here is to quickly get on the same page as God when this trigger happens. So when this trigger happens, you start to feel the fiery emotions building up. Maybe you feel it in your chest, maybe your stomach, maybe your face gets red. Boom, right then and there, you need to interrupt the spiral and get on the same page as God. This comes with practice. And I will say that once I healed my nervous system dysfunction, this became infinitely easier to interrupt this spiral because it actually gave me time to respond. It allowed me just the time that I needed, like a moment to decide how I wanted to react. And then that's where the self-control comes in and the discipline comes in. But when you're in a state of fight or flight, self-control and discipline honestly kind of go out the window. Okay, so you interrupt the emotions and say aloud, Lord, I agree with you that this is a training opportunity for my child. Since I am committed to rewiring my brain and responding in healthy ways, I will stop what I'm doing and I will take the time to train my child not to throw food. Thank you for this opportunity. That's what it looks like to agree with God. Now, you're thinking, okay, that sounds like, great, of course, but usually things like this happen when there's a lot going on. Maybe another child is causing chaos somewhere else. Maybe you have to use the restroom, or you're thirsty, or 15 other of your basic needs aren't being met. You have dinner going on the stove and that's burning, and there's all kinds of things that can be going on all at the same time. And yes, that is where the discipline of Christian brain rewiring comes in. You need to be committed to rewiring different responses into your brain like a practice, and it does get easier over time. So keep in mind, this is so crucial, and this is what I teach a lot about in my course, is that God made our brains to be plastic, meaning that we get to change them. That is such good news, right? So when we're in a state of fight or flight, that is when our brains are the most plastic. So when you're triggered or feeling symptomatic, that's when your brains are the most moldable. But this also just so happens to be the most difficult time to have a different response and to change your response, to rewire a different response into your brain. So that's, where the work comes in. That's what I help you with in my course. The second tip for quieting triggers is to understand something very crucial and biblical. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, meaning your words matter tremendously. Proverbs 18:21 says, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruits." Your words have power, so you must use them wisely. When it comes to Christian brain retraining, your words speak volumes with regard to your health. There's a direct correlation. Okay, so there's a correlation between your words and your thoughts, and your thoughts and the health of your body. Okay, so even a thought as small as, these kids are being so annoying after the trigger happens can tell your brain that you are in a state of panic, which leads to all kinds of negative outcomes. This tip plays off of the old adage, which says to think before you speak, but I would take it further to say think before you think. Even thinking certain words can tell your brain that it needs to put you in a state of fight or flight, which can lead to all the unhealthy responses that I mentioned before: crying, yelling, screaming, throwing something, breaking something. So that's what we want to avoid. So to do this, again, interrupt these thoughts instantly and never, ever speak out loud negative thoughts. So something that I like to do to interrupt thoughts like this is to say, "Nope, not today, Satan." Or I'll say, "Stop," and then I'll clap really loudly. There are different techniques that you can do to interrupt these spirals. Also what I'll do is I'll think about a bunch of things that I'm grateful for just right there in that moment. I have tons more tips like this too in my course, but those are just a few to get you started on this practice of thinking before you think. The next way to quiet triggers is to understand that often your feelings are lying to you. Now, I want to be very clear that I'm not saying that you need to shove all your emotions and feelings under the rug and pretend that they don't exist. That's actually not beneficial for healing either. What I am saying is that we need to understand that sometimes symptoms and triggers are benign, and it's in our best interest to simply observe these symptoms and triggers as an inactive participant. So triggers are liars. Your child throwing food is not the end of the world. Frustrating as all get out, yes. But worth sending your body into a state of panic? No. Triggers can be so difficult though, because they elicit very real emotions and sometimes even legitimate pain. So it feels very real. However, if you can develop the skill of looking at the trigger for what it is and not attributing any weight behind these triggers, then you'll be able to see the emotions that they elicit for what they are too. Simply negative emotions that will come and go. Now, another thing that I want to say about this is that you're not going to feel like this forever. When you are in this state of panic, when you are feeling triggered and all these, symptoms are happening to your body, just remember you're not going to feel like this forever. This can be a really good reminder when you're triggered, and to even say this to yourself out loud: you will not feel like this forever. In fact, in mere seconds or minutes, it's going to go away. That feeling is going to pass over you. So remember to behave like an inactive participant in that feeling. When you understand that, then you'll be able to give yourself a little talk down and implement, the techniques that I talked about before for calming down your nervous system and getting through the trigger without doing real damage to your body or your relationships. Okay, finally, the last way to quiet triggers is to make sure that your rage-soothe ratio is in balance. Okay, the rage-soothe ratio was developed by Dr. Sarno, who was a big player in the TMS world. And TMS is just an acronym for, I'm probably going to botch this name, but tension myositis syndrome, which is just mind-body syndrome, which is what I've been talking about a lot on my channel. So limbic system dysfunction, impaired limbic system, TMS, mind-body syndrome, etc. can all be used synonymously. I'm sure that there are some slight distinctions between the terms, but you get the idea. The brain affects the body. That's what we're saying here. Okay, so the rage-soothe ratio addresses the fact that sometimes in life, we have a significant amount of stress and tension, which we can either be aware of or unaware of. This stress increases our rage and can get to a point where we develop mind-body symptoms because of this stress. Now, rage, I want to be clear, is used very loosely in this terminology because when I think of rage, I think of seething anger that makes someone completely go off the rails. And that's not necessarily what this has to mean in this case, although it can mean this. But it can also look like someone having anxiety, which is, stored up in their body, causing them to become symptomatic or develop triggers to minor stressors. Or it can even just be someone's face getting red or clenching their jaw or their fists when they get upset. So that's where the soothe part of the ratio comes in. We need to have soothing things to counter the rage that we face every day. This means finding pleasures in life and actively participating in things that will calm down your nervous system. When your rage-soothe ratio is off, that's when you're typically more symptomatic or triggered. Ideally, your soothe should be higher than your rage throughout the day, which is why I talk so much about weaving pockets of regulation throughout your day. So get really serious about self-care and any other technique that you have to calm down your nervous system, and then that will put you in an ideal state of rage-soothe ratio. This is what I do in my course. I give you an exact formula which addresses this concept of the rage-soothe ratio. It helps put your body into a balanced state to calm down your nervous system. So if this is something that you feel would be a blessing to you, I hope you consider taking my free workshop using the link below. It's my 5-step framework for overwhelmed and overworked homemakers. Just click the link in the description below to sign up for your spot. And your homemaker homework for today is to think of one of your triggers that you would most like to address and rewire different responses into your brain. Then create a battle plan for what you will do when the trigger comes up using all the tips that I gave you today. Then pray for an opportunity to work on this trigger and then ask the Lord for guidance during this time that He gives you this opportunity. Okay, thanks so much for watching.